What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Bro History. It's Henry Zamota and Danny Abdel-Jabbar. What's up, my friend? How are you?
Okay. Normally chilling, but this is going to be a difficult one to go through, so I'm all right. How about yourself?
Yeah, I'm doing okay. I'm doing better than I was a couple days ago.
For sure.
We're about a week. Today we're recording this on September 17th. It's been about a week since Charlie Kirk was assassinated. Man, that feels so weird to say. It was a pretty surreal thing. And I'll be honest, I was devastated by it. Like, I was absolutely devastated by it. And I'm still just blown away that we all really witnessed this as like a global community. Everyone in the world saw this video. It was one, and we've been covering the war in Ukraine. We've been covering Gaza for many years now.
Yemen,
So both you and I,
Syria.
Yemen, we've been covering war zones for a very long time, and we've seen the most horrific shit online.
We've seen some.
However, this video, so I'll tell you how I discovered it. Someone texted me, my friend texted me saying, "Hey, Charlie Kirk just got shot." And I'm like, "What?" And I look online and I'm like, I went to Twitter, and the first thing I see was just his head explode, like a bullet going to his neck with blood gushing everywhere.
It was way too much
and it was,
blood.
and I felt physically sick from watching it. And
if I could unwatch it, I think I would.
It was completely shocking. For some reason that I'm not entirely sure why I was so impacted by it, because I think if people have listened to this show, they probably, the times I've talked about Charlie Kirk, they probably haven't been nice.
Yeah.
I have not had like that many nice things to say about Charlie Kirk, which probably makes me feel like some kind of weird feeling of guilt, because I'll just be honest, my opinion on Charlie Kirk basically, because I've been in conservative politics or kind of adjacent to it for almost 10 years at this point. Not saying that I'm super involved in Republican politics. I definitely have not been over the past 6 years. But
you're in the orbit.
When I was, especially, 6, 7 years ago, I was, in the National Review circles. I was in Manhattan Club. So he was such a fixture. Like, he was, it was when he was just starting out, like, he was known as this young prodigy who was gonna get all these donors, and he was running the largest youth movement. So he was just this fixture in conservative politics forever, since I've really been engaged in this type of thing. And he's almost my age. I'm a little bit older than him, but I was thinking, why does this impact me so much? Because my feelings towards him was always that he was, a Republican. He was part of the Republican establishment. And, he debated college kids. Like, that was his claim for fame, or he was a shill for Israel. But I still felt this kind of overwhelming kind of grief, which I didn't really feel like was normal. So I wanted to talk about this with you. Maybe if we can get to the bottom of this, or maybe
I don't think we will, but we can try and put it together,
and then we can maybe discuss some of the theories of his death, which many I feel are half baked and very messy. But again, I think the reason why I was just so struck by it is because at that moment you kind of see people in politics and you're like, oh yeah, fuck that guy. You have all this commentary on your head and how oh, that guy should have said that, or oh, that guy's just that guy's engaging in sophistry right there. However, when someone dies and you see their family grieving over them, you realize that that's a human being. You realize okay, that is just a person with a family, with a circle of friends who love them. And what I thought of was this kid was younger than me. This guy ran this this organization that was worth over 100, or he just he operated an organization that was worth over $100 million at such a young age. I was just like, I couldn't do that. Who am I to judge? Like, if I was in that position and I, achieved so much success, and I had all these like donors pulling at me, and I had all these types of pressures, like, would I operate any differently than he did? I mean, maybe, like, I could never imagine being under that type of pressure. And the guy was a worker. The guy was I don't know, there's no other way to say that he was just a gigantic force. And not only American politics, or conservative politics, but in American politics. And he was a gigantic force, whether you loved him or if you hated him. Just think how like popular these the Charlie Kirk memes were over the years. Mm-hmm. If you want to, and most of the Kirk memes were making fun of him, but like the fact that there was just so many of them kind of just proved
he wasn't nothing.
What a force.
Yeah. He wasn't nothing.
That he actually
was something.
And I think another thing that kind of got me was just seeing like how many people like really love this guy, because you develop this relationship with people, even if it's not a mutual relationship, it's a one-on-one relationship. You have the relationship with them. They don't have the relationship with you.
Right.
Even people who are listening to this show,
somewhat
you have a relationship with us. We don't really have a relationship with you. No offense.
Right.
I mean, maybe we do in spirit as you're listening, and we appreciate it. But seeing like all these people who are just like crushed and devastated over it was really hard to watch. And I have some friends who are like, real conservative, who were real devastated about what happened. And obviously just the fact that he was a father and he had a family, and he was killed in front of them, is just all of that together. It makes it just feel like a giant nightmare. And that's the only way I can describe about it. So this is totally meant to kind of, I don't want to act like I was some big Charlie Kirk supporter when he was alive, because that wouldn't be, correct if you listen to our previous episodes. But obviously we would never, ever, ever wish that upon him. And, I offer, I think we speak for both of us, but I'll let you say what you want to say. I offer my full condolences, and I'm just, I'm heartbroken with you if you're a Kirk supporter, despite my maybe past political disagreements.
I mean, I'm right there with you, Henry. I also offer my unwavering condolences. This is, the act of senseless violence like this, loss of life. It's unacceptable in my worldview. From my logical perspective, I won't get too deeply into it because it isn't the right time or place. But obviously, I didn't agree with anything that Charlie Kirk said. Right, more left leaning. Cards on the table. He wasn't a staple in my YouTube feeds, but he certainly showed up every now and then. But notwithstanding, though, what you're describing, Henry, is just empathy. And I resonate with that. I feel that empathy as well. I also, had that visceral reaction to seeing die and the aftermath and the wake, and, seeing his wife and his kids, and, thinking about, the loss of life. Really, I think this is an exercise in empathy that, although tragic, is, I think, incredibly positive. And I hope that we're able to take this as a moment to, place more emphasis on the value of human life, and again, I didn't agree with almost anything that Charlie Kirk said or stood for, but one thing I'll praise him on, and I give him high marks for, is his ability to want to reach out and have a debate, a discussion with anyone in an open forum, and I think that's fantastic. I think we should be able to talk with anyone about anything, but importantly, we should be able to do so in a way that's nonviolent, and that, places an emphasis on empathy for one another, that we're all human beings trying to figure this shit out, and that, we're able to place more value on human life. Because at the end of the day, we're all just people. So it's a sad day, but hopefully we learn something from this.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully, the biggest concern at this point is like now we have this reignition of a culture war because, obviously he was a political figure.
Sure.
In some sense, and with conservative politics, most on the right, and especially in conservative politics, are borderline Christian or religious leaders as well. I mean, that's just part of the right, the conservative ethos that goes hand in glove with religion. So it kind of hits it from both perspectives. Conservatives are 9 out of 10 are going to be talking about God and Jesus Christ and their politics, and it just adds that extra dynamic to it. So I wanted to just pay our respects because it was an awful thing, and wishing his circle and his family and his children and his soul, nothing but love. But I want to talk about some of the things online that I've read in reaction to this, because obviously everyone is jumping to conclusions when there's a high profile assassination. It's a perfect opportunity to blame someone. And
right.
We were talking about this via text, and was he right wing? Was he left wing? And we can get into that. I don't want to dive. I'll just give you a spoiler alert. I think it's as more things come out about this case, my gut reaction was like, oh, this was like some left-wing terrorist. Well, or my first reaction was I thought it was like a Muslim or Palestinian activist. That was my first thought, like gut. 10 minutes after I had
Netanyahu came out much.
Yeah. I mean, the Israelis came out and said it was Muslim terror. That's when I stopped believing it was Muslim terror when they said that.
Just immediately.
I was okay,
like, nope,
I
that's
crossed
rolled
that
out.
off. That's rolled out.
Uh-huh.
But the first thing I wanted to talk about was, we'll get into the whole left and right wing thing, but this conspiracy theory about, since you brought up the Israelis, is the conspiracy going around that's actually quite popular.
Interestingly compelling.
I'm trying to figure out why. I guess I know why. And just full disclaimer, neither of us are Zionist or fans of Israel on this show. Mm-hmm. When I say, I actually haven't even got your opinion on this, but this article that came out from the Gray Zone and from Max Blumenthal, someone who I've been reading for years. I've read every book from Max Blumenthal. I've read every single book that he's read. I've read so many of his articles. I have to say, this is the worst thing he's ever published in his life. This article about linking his death to Israel is almost insane. That's the only way I can actually describe it. I think the conspiracy that the Israelis killed him are insane. And I am open to the idea that the Israelis were involved in a lot of major conspiracies. We don't have to go through them all, but
I don't know what he was thinking about when he formulated this. I don't know if maybe this was like a gut reaction, because there is some interesting tidbits in that article, right? I don't necessarily, put them all together and say that it makes a cohesive argument. There's interesting things that I'd like to talk about, but maybe he was, I don't know, he's kind of a bit, I wouldn't call him a left-wing extremist.
I would call, he's not a bit lefty. He's a leftist.
Would you call him a left-wing extremist?
I wouldn't call him an extremist, but I would call him a leftist. I would call him a leftist.
Let's put it this way, on the right, right? And so maybe this was like a visceral reaction to, put in his mind that, it couldn't have been, a left-winger. It had to have been some other state actor, and, who's a better scapegoat than Israel these days. I mean, they carry out summary executions of people in foreign, territories regularly, right? Like, so they kind of already have the capacity to do so. And he points out a few He points out a few situations where maybe they have motive to do so as well. So, maybe he's just deranged in that way. Maybe he didn't think it through hard enough. Maybe he was just expressing so much like random grief that he had to fill the gap of information, like, because I feel like that's what a lot of us are doing right now, myself included. You see something horrible and you just have this desire to like know why did this happen, right? And so you just try and consume as much as possible and formulate an opinion or try to come to a conclusion on why something so tragic and senseless could happen. And for Max Blumenthal, it turned out to be that it was like the Mossad or something like that.
Well, so he doesn't outright say that the Israelis assassinated him.
Of course not.
To be fair, he doesn't go out and say, we have a smoking gun, the Israelis killed him. He doesn't outright say it. And in interviews, I watched his interview on Tim Dillon. He says at the end of it, listen, I have no proof that, or there's no proof, and even in the article, there's no proof that the Israelis are assigned to it, but he's laying out a theory and a motive in this article. And essentially what this narrative is, and this narrative has extended way outside of just Blumenthal's article. Now it's I would say it's like 25% of Twitter.
It's at this point.
It's a pretty mainstream thing. Basically, he's saying that Charlie Kirk was turning down money from Netanyahu. He was becoming more and more frustrated with his Zionist donors, and they were scared that he was going to turn and he was going to, not toe the line as much as he was already. Because let's just be fair, I'm not trying to denigrate Charlie Kirk. His death was horrible, but let's just be real. This guy was a committed Zionist from the day he entered politics, from his tragic death.
But what is about that theory, though, is that, it does kind of hold some legs, because towards the end of his life, he was starting to outwardly express some frustration with, the ways that Israel had been, not just carrying out war, but also, potentially bringing, the United States into war with Iran. I know he was pretty vocally against that, the bombing of Iran, thought it was foolhardy. He had that interview with Megyn Kelly where, he was very frustrated at the fact that when he brought on Tucker Carlson recently, and Tucker Carlson had some not so nice things to say about the government of Israel, that he lost $2 million of donors, and how his donors were being, were pressuring him really, really hard, and many of them were those Zionist groups. And then there was the other little bit that, I think is unconfirmed, but like a source close to Charlie Kirk said that he was afraid that that Israel would kill him, and then he died, So, I mean, it's not an implausible thing to think about, right? I don't think that this is like a whack job, crazy idea, like offensive or even anti-Semitic, claim to look into this, because there are some interesting tidbits on here that line up. But ultimately, in my opinion, this is nonsense.
Yeah. So listen, to him, I have no doubt that everyone who deals with these big Zionist donors,
right,
in the back of their mind, they're scared of getting killed.
Yeah.
I have no doubt that is always in the back of your mind when you're dealing with the Israelis, that, hey, worst comes to worst, they could kill me. But essentially, they're talking about this meeting in the Hamptons with Bill Ackman and some other Zionist leaders, and how basically they were ambushed. He was ambushed at this retreat or strategy session, and they started yelling at him, and they started essentially threatening him at this meeting. But it turns out, the more it comes out, and it's not like I, think highly of Bill Ackman, but Bill Ackman and the other guy from the guy who does the Babylon Bee, I forget his name. I forget his name. Seth Dillon.
Yeah,
is that his name?
I think so. Yeah.
So I don't like these guys at all, by the way. So I normally wouldn't come out and corroborate it. Well, I can't corroborate it. I wasn't there, but I wouldn't believe them. However, they brought all the receipts. Like, it turned out that Charlie Kirk is the one that actually scheduled this meeting.
Right. Everyone was there.
He's the one who reached out and coordinated. It was his idea to run this meeting.
Right.
And in terms of him turning against Israel, people are like, oh yeah, he was finally waking up. He's finally understanding like the horror. He was giving it. He finally understood and getting frustrated with all the carnage, and maybe there's some truth to that. I'm sure it's extremely frustrating dealing with the Israelis and these big Zionist billionaires. I'm sure it's extremely hard. Ben Rhodes had a book that spoke, and it was unbelievably candid about how difficult it was to deal with the Israelis. But his turn, the big thing was having Tucker Carlson at one of the Turning Point USA events.
Yep.
And having Dave Smith, comic Dave Smith, the libertarian comedian. So he had them on, and they basically, Tucker Carlson didn't start talking about the Israelis until like last year, until very, very recently, first and foremost.
Mm-hmm.
And Dave Smith is like, he's a libertarian, but he's a pretty moderate and reasonable guy when you hear him talk.
Yeah.
He's not obviously he's Jewish. He's not an anti-Semite in any way. He's just against, the war in Gaza.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially what he was doing with these, inviting them is that Charlie Kirk had this gigantic responsibility, this huge responsibility of essentially creating a pipeline of young college conservatives into the Republican Party. That was his job.
Mm-hmm. And that was the purpose of Turning Point USA.
That was the purpose of Turning Point USA. Mm-hmm. It was it was a political machine. It was a political apparatus of the Republican Party.
His job grooming instrument, basically.
You could say it was the grooming. It was the grooming. That is very fair to say.
It is fair. That's what it is.
So his job was to groom young people into conservative politics. And when you enter conservative politics, there are politics that you need to have to remain in conservative politics. And one of the biggest, and it may be the most important part of being a Republican, is being very, very pro-Israel.
Now, right up there with like Second Amendment stuff.
Yeah, I would say being pro-Israel is probably more important.
Yeah, it might be.
Than being flimsy on gun, being more restrictive on gun control.
Mm-hmm.
So what he was doing was he was trying to relieve the pressure, because as we all know, the younger generation, the Zoomers, are basically the reverse of the boomers in their politics. So the Zoomers are extremely, as a demographic, they are extremely critical of Israel.
Right.
It's like 80, I would close to say almost all
pretty much all
Democrats are against Israel. I mean, I know that's a huge assumption.
And it's pretty broad.
We're talking over 80%.
It's based too, because it's not just like left-wing people or right-wing people. It's like all of them. All of the Zoomers, all of them.
You never know with these statistics, but I've seen enough of these studies where...
And it can change, like with sufficient time and propaganda and grooming. Like that could change. And I guess that's kind of the point of organizations like Turning Point USA, is to shape hearts and minds, so to speak, for that.
It's to groom people to have the right politics, also to groom their smarts and to connect them and start their political career.
It's also
why
kind of
they're kind of like a fraternity. They're very much like a fraternity.
100%.
They have chapter presidents and all that.
Yeah. It's interesting too, because it's also kind of the conservative answer to the idea, I'm going to call it an idea on purpose, that, university systems are grooming or radicalizing people towards the left, right?
Yeah.
So that was the response,
Yeah, it is. That was the counter. I remember being younger in the National Review Young Leadership Circles, and that was a big thing they used to talk about, is that because when I was younger, I was in the it wasn't like a big deal or anything. It wasn't like I was connected, but I was in a group in New York with the National Review,
right,
called like the Young Leaders Club. And that's something they used to talk about in meetings. They used to talk about, we're losing to the left with they were talking about, we can't find young, talented conservatives in college campuses anymore. We just can't. They don't exist. All the talented writers are all Democrats. They're all liberal. So the pool of people that we can find to write for the National Review is shrinking all the time. And that was a major concern. I mean, and they were right, because at that time, the culture was very much center left, and especially on college campuses. And I'm sure it is still pretty much that way on college campuses, where a lot of the kids who are coming from these upper middle class backgrounds who are getting really good grades probably come from liberal families, or they're coming from liberal families. They'll hold different liberal politics, and they'll become more liberal in college. And it is what it is right now. Like, that's just proven when you see voting records. Like, more Democrats have master's degrees and advanced degrees. It is what it is. I'm not trying to denigrate Republicans.
Yeah, it's not saying anything about
or
intelligence or anything. It's just that's the statistic.
So Turning Point USA was an attempt to counter that, and it was very successful, because when you join a club. So here's the thing about joining a club, like a conservative club, especially when you're the minority, you become more, and it's like any group, you become a bit more. I don't know if tribal is the right word, but you become more. You get more into it when you're the minority, because then you have your community. Oh, we're surrounded by Democrats. I can tell you that when I was younger, the Republican circles in New York City were very right wing. They were they were much more right wing, I bet, than a Republican circle in even like Texas or someplace. And the reason why they were so right wing
is because
they had because they were in New York City, and like every single Republican person who joined that organization knew each other, and they were the only Republicans in the city, because in New York City it's like 98% Democrat, right? So they were like the 2%,
right? So all 15 of them got together, and there's we really gotta,
we're gonna, and they loved
toe that line.
They were big Trump people, like they were very, they were very right wing. I met a lot of interesting people there from a big and large, and I've met freaking, not in the National Review, but like in just like kind of that broader sphere. I've met everyone from like kind of weird objectivist, like Ayn Rand followers, to like hardcore libertarian types, to straight up National Socialist, straight up fucking like
actual Nazis.
They'll be like, hey, I got to tell you something. I'm actually a National Socialist. I actually fucking love Hitler. Because that's in wild. Those communities too, when you're the minority, you like everyone who's like even like not left wing, they all kind of band together because they're all such minorities. They have to join together. So it's
about that, Henry, like I don't want to throw you under the bus or anything like that. I think it's cool that you did those things and joined those organizations just for the context and the experience. But I always found that like joining those clubs are lame. Like,
they are lame.
Like I was in politics myself, right? So like I spent 2 years as a committee person for my city in New Jersey. I thought, hey, look at this. I ran as a Democrat, full disclosure, because that's what you ran as in, a Democratic city in, Jersey.
You have to make up some story that like your parents fled from communism.
I mean, the thing is like, okay, so
if you're Republican, I mean, that's
right. I've never ran into like went into the politics thing. It was fucking lame, right? And it was also really annoying, and it opened my eyes to like, I don't want to be a Democrat, right? Because they all suck. But I've never run into a situation where I'm like, I came into contact with like a communist.
Yeah.
You know what I'm like? I've never like met these like ultra far left, like Antifa types or whatever. Like I've never met them. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's weird.
I'm glad I haven't
really
because
they're weird. I don't need anything to do with them.
I've never really came across those Antifa types either, to be
like, where
completely honest.
Are they all just closeted?
Yeah.
What is it?
I don't know. I think we were talking about this via text. I think it's kind of like a microculture.
Yeah.
I also think a lot of it is that are people who are like on retainer who, I don't know. It's like a complicated thing. Yeah, like they're not. I think a lot of them have problems, and people, people kind of like pay them to to militarize
Mm-hmm.
at some points. But I don't want to go too into that. Maybe we can touch on this when we talk more about the Tyler Robinson. But
Yeah, so I want to say, but are we still on the Israel or the Blumenthal
yeah,
bit?
so yeah, I completely went off topic.
Yeah, that's
So
all right. That's
yeah,
cool.
I didn't mean to do that much of a segue. So just going back to this, the point I was trying to make is that Zoomers are becoming, even Zoomer right wingers are becoming increasingly anti-Israel.
Yeah.
I read a poll that like 50% of evangelicals, Zoomers, were not Zionist, who were skeptical of Israel. That's a a terrible number because
Terrible for
evangelicals
Israel.
evangelicals are the base for Israel.
Mhm.
So there's some huge problems, and Charlie Kirk was not only getting attacked from the left, but he was also getting attacked by the right. So people were calling him an Israeli shill, all this, he was getting attacked from both sides. And I think those those Turning Point USA, I think a lot of the young people were becoming a lot more skeptical of Israel. So he had to, throw them a bone, essentially. He couldn't just ignore the questions that were being asked. So he started to say, okay. I understand why you're asking these questions. I'm not going to call you anti-Semitic. You're not going to be called a heretic.
Right.
You're not going to be shunned from this movement. I'm going to do my best to answer your questions. I'm going to run focus groups. We'll talk about this. So he got people like Tucker Carlson, which I don't even think is really a good representative of that, but
an interesting figure in that kind of like real skeptical, wing.
But I think Dave Smith was like a really good person to get for those type of events because Dave Smith is reasonable. Mm-hmm. He's obviously smart. He's not malevolent at all. And he was doing, he was basically going to these Turning Point events and he was saying, God, if you're pro-life and you support the war in Gaza, and these were his words, then these aren't exactly his words, but he made this point. Mm-hmm. That you can't call yourself pro-life if you support the war in Gaza because it's a slaughter,
right?
And he was getting like applauses, and apparently a lot of the donors were upset with him because of that. Mm-hmm. Now, to draw that and to take some remarks where he's saying things like, "We can't, you can't be called anti-Semitic if you just have questions about the Israeli government," to call that as a betrayal of Israel, that he was flipping to the other side, is just, you're making up a reality that just wasn't the case, most likely. I'm not involved or know the details about the situation, and I'm sure someone like Candace Owens, who's pushing this crap, probably does know a lot more about the dynamics. However, from my perception, what he was doing was that he was actually working with the Israelis to help them kind of deal with this problem, rather than just ignore it. Like he was working with them as like a realist, saying, "Hey, guys, I'm getting all these questions from all the young right wingers right now, and it's growing and growing and growing. We need to address this. We
can't ignore it, right?
And we can't just call them anti-Semitics. It's going to make anti-Semites. It's just going to make things worse. We need to come up with better answers on our relationship with it, with the United States relationship with Israel." I was like, and then I think he said something, "I'm an American." I mean, it's true. Like he's an American. Like I can't, the position that I'm being put in is really, really difficult. Mm-hmm. And he was working with them to kind of get to talk, like to better the talking points. And he would do things like play devil's advocate. He'd be like, "So what if someone says that?" So I think that was the activity that he was doing. It was more so working with them to try to address a really major issue for the Israelis, is losing the right-wing youth. And that's what I think that was from my perception. I have no doubt that, again, I'll say it again, there's rumors of him saying that he was fearful of his life. But
That's
I think, but I'll say it again. I think everyone who deals with like these crazy billionaire Zionist donors are scared of them. I would be terrified.
Right. Well, we also don't take
work with them.
Yeah, but we don't from billionaire Zionists, and he chose to. So
Well, that comes to an interesting point. Apparently, and I don't know the full details of this part of it, but they were going to give him $150 million, and he refused it. He didn't take the money. I don't know the details of that.
That I think will probably remain unknown and unknowable.
Yeah,
if that's the case.
That's the report. He, essentially said, "I'm not taking your money," which was a signal that, hey, we're going independent.
Right. You know what's interesting about that is like, okay, so I'm going to just play the devil's advocate just because I find these points interesting. Cards on the table. I think the whole connection that like maybe Israel did it, I think is nonsense. I think it's a coincidence that these things line up. Like,
oh, that's a horrible word to use.
I just kind of think it's unfortunately or fortunately. I don't know how to like feel about it, but like the only way I can describe it is this is a coincidence. But I am still interested in a lot of some of these things because one of the points was that Netanyahu came out pretty much immediately and also immediately said that it was some pro-Palestinian or Islamist.
He probably
like
thought,
that,
but honestly, that was probably his gut reaction.
Yeah, it was.
It was my immediate gut reaction.
It was
that it was a Palestinian.
Yeah, it was.
Or an I wouldn't think it would be an Iranian. If it was an Iranian, then I would be like, okay, what the fuck?
Yeah,
like,
then it would have been too on the nose, Yeah,
like that if it was a Palestinian activist, like that is within the complete realm of possibility.
But specifically the wording that he said was like right. So that implies that they're Islam, not like some random liberal that free Palestine, like literally like an Islamic terrorist, right? So it's coded language basically. And then him and Trump come out with like basically the same message at the same time. Right later that day, I think it was like at 3:20 or something like that. Literally both tweeted at the same time, or Truth Social, whatever they call that. That was interesting. Another interesting bit was that I found really, again, big coincidence, but how Ben Shapiro, like less than a day later, is like, oh, I'll step in and like start doing debates around like the country and fill in the slot for Charlie Kirk.
To give some charity to Ben Shapiro, everyone's taking that as like, I'm taking over the right wing now. Right. I think he was actually trying to express some charity.
Yeah,
right
he was
there.
being charitable.
Like he was trying to say, "Hey, I'm going to pick up your work where you last off." I think
I'm just saying, optically though, like if you read the whole like Blumenthal thing, he ends with that, right? He says, and I'll quote it. Literally, last line he says, "Within 24 hours of Kirk's death, Shapiro announced that he would be launching his own campus speaking tour, vowing we're going to pick up that blood-stained microphone where Charlie left it." And I think Blumenthal is doing something very specific here, right? I think he's doing the wink, wink, nod, nod by ending with the fact that, there's this maybe plausible motive that maybe either a Zionist entity or the state of Israel itself had something to do with his death because they were worried that he might be flipping at some point. And then all of a sudden it culminates with Ben Shapiro, of all people, taking over the mantle of Charlie Kirk to, groom the youth towards the Zionist agenda. I don't know. Like that's what he's doing in this article, right? I think it's nonsense. I think this is a series of interesting coincidences, maybe even some ironic coincidences, but I don't think it has anything to do with it personally.
Yeah, I agree. Honestly, it's when you make a conspiracy theory, like it needs to make sense,
right?
And let's just be honest. If they did turn on him, if Charlie Kirk really turned on the Israelis or vice versa for some reason, they wouldn't just shoot him.
No.
You know what? Do you know what they would do? They would
drag him.
They would drag him through exactly.
They would Epstein him, or say like, oh, he was on the Epstein list somehow.
Yeah, they would make up a scandal. They would take his money. They would stop giving him money. Right. They would say that he was gay. Right. They would make up some. They would do a character assassination, metaphorically, rather than actually carrying out an assassination before it would come to. They would do something like that. Like let's just be serious.
Or they would just pull,
wouldn't just
or like more
shoot.
likely, they pull all of the money, all the monetary support from him, and then he would have just faded into the background of like, irrelevance.
That's the most logical thing. They probably just would have taken the money, and then there would be no more speaking events, and then that
would have been it. And then Charlie would have been a blip. His 15 minutes of fame would have been over, and that's that. That's
he
more
would
the
have been
speed.
regulated to maybe his podcast, and that's it. It's like, Charlie Kirk was skilled. I think he was very well-rounded guy. Like, he could do a little bit of everything, but if he was regulated to just doing a podcast or something, like, we don't know if it would have been. He had a successful podcast, but like, that was a compliment to like the network. You know what I mean?
A big reason why bro history isn't in everyone's like, fucking feed right now all over the United States. Is a big part of it is we don't have giant backers. Like, if we had like giant Zionist donors, maybe we would also be very, very popular. I'm not gonna say that we can't be popular without it, but I am saying that money does help a lot. It would diminish his ability and his reach and his audience.
So that's what they would most likely do. They would just
pull money.
They would just pull the plug. So that's that. Like, right. I just don't think I really think these people who are throwing this out there are doing it. They're just too. They're too. Most of these people who are saying this are like, they literally just started questioning the relationship between Israel and the U.S. like a year ago,
right?
And they read about the USS Liberty, and they're
right. They just got red pilled, and like, they're deciding like they're looking sideways at any
and they don't know what up is down, and they anything that, and there's something to it when you went to that phrase. I don't like it, but there is something to the whole low IQ anti-Semitism thing. Mm-hmm. Some people really do blame Jews for just everything.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, Jews, that's not the Jews. And you're just like, okay, give me a break. Like, this is just not plausible. Like, this is an ally.
Like, that's the Jewish laser argument, right? It's like, it's so on the level of idiocy that it's kind of funny, actually.
I've heard other things, just like rumors. I haven't read too much into them, but I've heard rumors that it was Russian intelligence. I've heard rumors that it was Ukrainian intelligence, and neither of those really make too much.
It was George Soros. I relate it. That one went up and died immediately.
The Ukrainian one is a little weird though, because the guy's uncle was apparently involved with like mercenary groups.
Oh, really?
Tyler Robinson's. Yeah, I think it's a coincidence.
A weird, ironic coincidence, but yeah.
A lot of Mormons too, in Utah, a lot of Mormons get involved in like State Department type things. It's not out of the ordinary, because Mormons have huge, I want to do it. In the back of my mind, I've always wanted to do an episode on this, on like the Mormon connection, the Mormon question.
With geopolitics?
Well, there's a reason for this, because of their mission. And this goes back to even our country's history, the history of like a lot of European countries, is that their first diplomats, their first intelligence assets that go into other countries were often Christian missionaries.
Well, we just talked all about Japan, and that's a fucking crazy thing, because it was just Jesuit missionaries that were the first diplomats. It's a great example.
So obviously the Church of Latter-day Saints has a huge missionary network, and they have connections to different countries. So it's reasonable to just say, well, they probably was someone on a mission, got these connections. He ended up working with the government on things, and he had connections to the Ukrainians. Like, I think that's like, why would the Ukrainians do something like that? That would just be insane. So there's going to be a lot of these kind of weird conspiracy theories. So I don't know if you want to continue to talk about this or not, but I don't really have too much to say about this other than,
let's move on.
I think people need to be a little bit more reasonable and think things through, and not before coming to a conclusion, you really have to build up things like, some sort of connection, and I'm not saying like I'm a believer in, the JFK Israeli assassination theory. but at least there's like a plausible, like it makes sense. Like you can make a plausible story. Like JFK was going to rein in Israel's nuclear program, and then going back to the Oswald connection of him being killed by Jack Ruby, who was a Jewish mobster, and there's like there's connections that you can make there, but like here there's nothing but like a very, very shaky motive, like a motive that just by itself like doesn't even really make that much sense.
Well, I think that's
it tears apart and with just a little bit of scrutiny.
That's a segue, Henry, to talk about like Robinson now, because like the question on everyone's mind right now is like, okay, they got somebody, he's in custody, FBI swears up and down that this is the man, this is the guy, and so the question now becomes motive, right? And so around motive, even before we knew who was Tyler Robinson, the question on everyone's mind was like, is this guy a left winger or a right winger? Like, what, who is he? What is he? Like profiling this guy basically. Why did he decide to kill Charlie Kirk? Right?
Yeah.
And most are still unanswered, and we're not gonna be able to answer them, but we can talk about some of the, background context and some of the arguments that were made.
It's interesting because obviously, like in the context of the cultural war, people want to blame. Obviously, it's pretty easy to. Charlie Kirk's a right-wing political figure, so I mean, who else done it? It's got to be a left-wing extremist, right?
Right.
So, I even thought that, that was my second reaction, that it was an Antifa type, but there really isn't any evidence to suggest that this was an Antifa person or a communist or anything of that nature. We really don't know that much, and that's what makes it so strange.
Right.
The information we're getting about Tyler Robinson is very it's like underwhelming. Like it's just, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing. Like we're expecting something juicy, but I guess, the thing that everyone's pointing to is that he's gay and he has a gay boyfriend.
He's bi and he has
bi
any other partner.
But I've actually read that it wasn't. It's not trans. Like I don't even know what the correct verbiage in this case is.
Transitioning. So
they're not transitioned yet.
Yeah.
So they still call themselves a boy. I don't actually know that.
Not for us to label them.
I don't know what the correct label is.
Neither do I.
For that. I'm not saying that as in
transition.
Like, human. I'm just saying.
A trans individual, right? We have no idea what they go by. We don't know. We don't know. It's not important. Well, it's really not important, right?
Well, no, it is important because the narrative was that, it was a trans activist who like it was a radical transsexual group that did this, and I don't know. I honestly don't know if that's the case or not.
Let's peel right. So let's kind of like outline a couple of the things that that we know, or at least that we're being told about this kid, and to kind of get an idea for like who he is. So was a lot of where in the earliest times, like when they first caught him, we had a name, but like this kid has like almost no online presence whatsoever, right? Like he's in some chat groups on Discord and he plays video games and shit like that. But outside of that, like he's not posting on Facebook. He doesn't have like a manifesto somewhere. He may or may not have had a note that we'll never see. The only thing that we were going on to figure out where this guy, was politically speaking, are from his family, accounts from people who knew him, including accounts from people who knew him a long time ago, right? Like back in high school and shit, and haven't seen him in years. And finally, the only like tangible piece of like evidence that we can point to that isn't like eyewitness testimony, was the bullets. They found the gun, the alleged gun, in the woods, and inscribed on the casings of the bullets were a couple of messages. Immediately from that, when they first got it, they're like, "Oh, we got him. It's a left winger. It's a radical, Antifa type." There was 1, 2, 3, 4, I think maybe 4 different bullet casings and different inscriptions on them. So I'm going to read them, each of them, and then I'm going to give you some of the context and also give you how the initial reaction was, right? So the first one was, "Notices bulges. Oh, woo, what's this?" The context behind that is that is
Oh no, I have zero clue what that means.
I don't blame you. It's kind of like a younger, meme style phrase that's associated with the furry subculture. Do you know what a furry is?
Sadly, I am a furry.
No, you're not, dude.
Sadly, I know too well. No, I know
No.
what a furry is, but
For those who don't know, like, it's like a thing where they dress up in fucking costumes that are like anthropomorphized like animals. What's furry is not kink shaming, but that's what it is. And
you can kink shame on that. That's really weird.
anyway, it's like online role playing or trolling. Oh, whoa, what's this? Is a common like meme format, right? It's a meme, but it's kind of people are latching onto that furry subculture thing, and like I gotta admit that furries don't necessarily strike me as a right wing thing, even though it's not exclusive. I'm sure there are plenty of right wingers that are furry, but it's traditionally understood as like maybe like kind of a left wing thing, that kind of open fluidity and sexuality, right? The next one was, we'll stay with the sexuality bit. If you're reading this, you are gay, Lamau, LMAO. I don't know of many left wingers who would use "you're gay" as a pejorative or like as an insult, right? So that kind of like ruins the he's a left winger kind of bit. But really, it has nothing to do with sexuality or with political ideology. It's just a fucking, like, it's a thing that people say on the internet, or like in video games. Like, if you see this, you're gay. Like, I've seen that so many times on Reddit, Like, it's a stupid nothing. It's literally a stupid nothing. But, read that and, they're looking for answers and they assign, some stuff. Now, are others. These two are probably more definitive, but one of them definitely is misunderstood. So the next one is, hey, fascist, catch. And then up, right, down, down, arrows. Now, the word fascist obviously jumps out, right? You can immediately make the connection, and people did, that this is an Antifa type, right? Anti-fascist message on a bullet, right? Immediately you're constructing the narrative because Charlie Kirk is on the right wing. Maybe the shooter thought he was a fascist and wrote on this bullet, hey, fascist, catch. But what's important about this is that up, down, right, left, whatever bullshit, it's literally a controller input sequence for the video game Helldivers 2 that you use to deploy like a fucking bomb, And so whether he intended, like what he intended by saying, hey, fascist, catch, and then doing the Helldiver thing together, is this trolling? Did he mean something by it?
I read that the
know.
hey, fascist, catch was a Helldivers reference too.
Yeah, it's definitely a Helldivers reference, but like, does it mean anything more than the Helldivers reference? Don't know. We don't know because we can't talk to him, right? Like, he'll have to stand in court and to figure that out.
It has to come through discovery. It has to come through discovery.
Exactly.
With the case. That's why I hope he doesn't plead guilty, so they go through this discovery.
Yeah, I do too. The thing about that is that we see the word fascist and we immediately jump to the idea that, oh, he must be an Antifa type because he's like,
yeah,
the shit. Now, the one that I can't explain, that kind of maybe places him on the left, or at least in that anti-fascist, is the "Oh Ciao Bella" lyrics, and it's a reference to Bella Ciao, an Italian anti-fascist song. But that phrase has also been like, it's appeared in a lot of pop culture media, like TV shows, like, and video games, in recent years. So I think there's a Netflix show, pretty prominent one. I didn't watch it, pretty recently, that had that in the show. So I don't know what to make of that. I didn't even know what this is. I had to go like Google it and listen to it myself. I'd never heard it in my life,
Yeah, I'm guilty of being like, I've heard Bella Ciao, and I was like, what's that? Oh, fascist stuff, I knew that. And I was, anti-fascist stuff, he's a communist. And then I was like, actually, I never really even heard this phrase before.
Yeah, so like context. And I think it's totally normal and human. Plug the gaps and want to plug the gaps and create the connections. I mean, as human beings, we have this like inbuilt pattern recognition, like deeply encoded into our brains, right? And so we want to recognize these patterns, and especially in something so traumatic. And if you're upset specifically, you want answers. But well,
I don't want to cut you off.
I'll end with saying, like, this is outside of this. There was some commentary from some of the family saying like he's been more politically radical, or like not radical. They didn't use that word. More. What was the specific word that they used? It wasn't radical. He was becoming more political was the word that they used, like the phrase that they used. And then I interviewed some kid from like when he was in high school with him. I mean, he's only like 22, so he's not that old and it's not that far removed, but we're talking about several years ago, you know, and how they said he was like pretty apolitical, you know? So like we're getting conflicting eyewitness testimonies. The only thing that's actually written down are these things. A note that I want to talk more about, but we'll get into like some of the other weird conspiracy theories
Let's
later.
save the note. Let's save the note for last. I do want to talk about that. I want to talk about this Ken Klippenstein article on Substack,
Which I thought was really awesome. I thought this was awesome. It was a good find.
I thought this was one of the best articles I've read.
I'm actually going to pull this part
on the subject, and I think it's worth just even pulling it up and just reading the article because it actually lays out a lot, and it's pretty crazy that this information was released. You know, I'm not saying anything.
This is like 90%
crazy that this was this isn't a New York Times article.
Right, this is some random Substack.
It's kind of wild that this Ken Klippenstein got this. I'm gonna be reading a lot more of him after this, but
I'm gonna pull it up now.
Pull it up.
All right, so this is actually mostly pictures and not words, so we can actually read through a lot of it. But here's an image where they're camping. So this is the suspect, Tyler Robinson. All right, so it starts off with a quote from his that they got from this leak. The background context is that apparently...
Just to give some context, just like looking at him, I mean, this is not...
Is this what I would
yeah.
Doesn't look... I mean, what does a mass murderer look like? You know, like
he looks... Well, no, he doesn't... The image that would pop up in your head would be somebody with, like, piercings everywhere and...
hair.
You know... He looks just like a normal guy, you know, a normal white guy. But yeah, let's go. let's read the. I think it's important to read the first line of that.
Yeah, the context is that apparently, so he has Discord. It's a chat service, if you don't know what it is, and people use it for gaming very often. This kid was a gamer, and so him in this chat group on Discord, it's kind of like a WhatsApp group, if you will. Some of the messages got leaked recently, and Ken puts this all together to kind of paint the picture that, and this is the first, like the tagline here, is that the accused shooter's politics is not what the government and the media say. And he does actually do a really good job of kind of tampering down some of the rhetoric about who is this person. So the first one, and this is a quote, an alleged quote from Tyler Robinson himself in that Discord chat. He says, "Hey guys, I have bad news for you all. It was me at UVU yesterday." Thus, Tyler Robinson messaged his friends on Discord, seemingly apologizing for murdering Charlie Kirk. "I'm sorry for all of this. I obtained this and other Discord chats I've decided to publish. The legacy news media, as usual, refuses, along with new information I've learned about Robinson from the people who knew him best." Here's an image, a screenshot, right, of that day. So someone writes, "Charlie Kirk got shot and then dead." And then someone's writing, "I just saw the whole video, shit, RIP, I guess. Bro didn't deserve to go out like that." And then on September 11th...
This is the response to him to the murder, right?
Right, exactly. We're just talking about Charlie Kirk getting shot in this chat. Just like probably many of you who are listening, like many of you who are listening and watching probably had this exact same message chain. Henry, you and I had this exact same exchange, right? You get a message, Charlie Kirk got shot. Oh, he's dead. I guess I just saw the video, holy shit. RIP, bro didn't deserve to go out like that. That's sad. The next day, and this is his tag, his tag on Discord is zealousmonkey55095, right? So all this is alleged, by the way. I have I can't corroborate, or I don't know what this is. But assuming that this is all real, he says, "Hey guys, I have bad news for you all. It was me at UVU yesterday. I'm sorry for all this. I'm surrendering through a sheriff friend in a few moments. Thanks for all the good times and laughs. You've all been so amazing. Thank you all for everything." So this is him, and this is apparently the screenshot of the leaked message. Ken goes on to write, "Trump and company portray the alleged Utah shooter as left-wing and liberals portray him as right-wing. Federal conclusion will inevitably be that he was a so-called, quote, nihilist violent extremist. Meanwhile, the crackdown has already begun, as I reported yesterday. The country is practically ready to go to war.
Well, wait. Let's just talk about that term, nihilist violent extremist. That's the word I used when that first happened. So when we were first texting about it, I said it was like, so I drew the connection that I had from this was the horrible school shooting in Minnesota, because that guy had like all these random memes written on the gun, which all contradicted each other. They were like,
they're kind of all over the place.
Far left. Yeah, it was just like a lunatic. It was like 6 million is not enough. There was bomb India. It was just like nothing that you could like definitively say was politically motivated. But the only way to describe it was just nihilistic narcissism, and this is what I still think it is. I think it's this nihilistic it's nihilistic violence.
Worth describing what, because I had to Google this a bit. I've never heard this term before. I actually think it's a little bit lazy, but it is a term. I don't know of a better term, so I'll use it. It's like nihilism. It's
meaningless violence for the sake of it.
Well, so I'm gonna put the definition because I want to get this right. Say it correctly.
NVE. I didn't know that there was an acronym for it, though.
Yeah, me neither. So I think what got me for this is that the word nihilism just doesn't fit for me. It's not like the same like philosophical term that like Nietzsche would write about or some shit like that. It's nihilism at its core. It's like it means believing that life has no inherent meaning or value or truth. Right. So if you do something nihilistic, if you commit a nihilistic act, it's like for an act of violence that doesn't have any like clear ideological purpose. It's basically just destruction for the sake of destruction. Right. I think why I feel that this term is lazy is because it's a bit of a God of the gaps argument. So God of the gaps argument is a philosophical fallacy. Basically, it's a logical fallacy where, how would I describe this? Okay, so if in science, like in when you're having a discussion about the existence of God, you might be like, hey, where do we come from? The religious person, the person of faith will say, oh, God created us, and then the scientific person will be like, no, we're just a random chaos that just happened to come together in such a way that we are now. Well, ultimately, when you have that conversation long enough, you're going to say, hey, where did life begin? The science person is going to say, the Big Bang. Then, the person of faith is going to say something to the effect of, all right, well, what came before the Big Bang? And then, it's kind of hard to answer that question. It's actually impossible because nothing existed before that, the scientist. But the person of faith will say, well, the gap in your logic, since you don't know, it must have been God. Right. That's the God of the gap. And so this calling this nihilistic violence or calling Tyler a nihilist violent extremist is kind of a God of the gaps argument, in the sense that like, just because we don't know what the specific person's motive is doesn't necessarily mean that they just did a senseless act of violence for no apparent reason. That's why I feel like it's a little bit lazy.
Yeah, I understand. I think the point that he's trying to make is that at the end, we're not going to be able to link a clear motive to him. So
certainly not like a left or a right.
We're going to label it as such, but let's go on. So,
right. So he goes on to say, what is this? This is a new quote. It's been so terrible, and seeing it from an inside perspective is so frustrating. A friend of Robinson since middle school told me. The childhood friend who asked not to be named for fear of threats provided me with the above non-public photo of Robinson on a camping trip, a favorite activity of his, to corroborate their relationship. Quote, I think the main thing that's caused so much confusion is that he was always generally apolitical for the most part, the friend told me. That's the big thing. He just never really talked politics, which is why it's so frustrating. The picture that emerges bears little resemblance to the media version. Robinson, I am told, though quiet, was a well-liked person with the supportive family. The friend group who he interacted with on Discord, far from some kind of militia camp or Antifa bunker as it's been portrayed as, represents a range of different political views, but mostly just talked video games. I think that's really important. Yesterday, FBI Director Cash Patel said in an interview that Robinson subscribed to left-wing ideology, citing his family's remarks to investigators. But those close to Robinson say that there was a lot his family didn't know about him. Their ideas are based on someone they didn't fully understand, the childhood friend told me. Though the family was generally supportive of Robinson, a claim corroborated by his mother's Facebook account brimming with praise for Tyler, they didn't seem to know about his relationship with a transgender person named Lance, the friend said. When I asked if his family would have been accepting, the friend replies, I don't even think Tyler knew the answer to that question, which is why he kept it so low-key between themselves. So I just want to pause there, because what he's saying here is that, like, this is what I was pointing out at you before. There was this evidence from eyewitness testimony, basically, of his character. His parents were saying that he was getting kind of political, but his parents didn't know shit about him, according to his friend, right? And they didn't know that he was in a relationship with a transgender person named Lance, right? So it brings it into question, like, did they really know their son? Now, this friend of his, who claims to be a close friend, says that he was apolitical, which is why they're frustrated with, how this could have gone down, because it doesn't make any sense. So there's a lot of conflicting narrative here, but at least this new thing here, it kind of goes counter to a lot of what the mainstream media, or even the fucking government is trying to tell you, It goes on. So Tyler's bisexuality, the friend said, was coupled with his openness on LGBTQ issues, but he wasn't some kind of cookie cutter lefty position on every or even most issues, his friend said. Obviously, he's okay with gay and trans people having the right to exist, but also believes in the Second Amendment, the friend said, referring to the right to bear arms. Sounds like me, The friend described the Robinson as a fairly typical of young man's age from Utah, someone who loved the outdoors, was a gamer, and into guns. Quote, to all of us, he just seemed like a simple guy who liked playing video games, like Sea of Thieves and Deep Rock Galactic and Helldivers 2, loved to fish and loved to camp, the friend said. It really did seem like that's all he was about. And what follows here is just some leaked pictures of those chats, right? So, yeah, this is Helldivers 2 YouTube. He posted video on that. Step closer to finding the DRG dwarves, which I'm guessing is a reference to the game itself.
And that was just recently. That was just that was 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago.
It's just backing off, right? Just a couple weeks ago, right? So they're not like radicalizing each other. This isn't like a fucking Antifa planning, camp. They're not like figuring out like how to kill Charlie Kirk.
No, it sounds like just a bunch of dorky kids talking about video games.
Exactly.
It's the thing is, it's like, so I don't know anything about Discord. I've tried using it and I couldn't figure it out.
But I got a bit of a learning curve, but
I'm too dumb to use Discord.
But it's nothing. It's just like Slack or whatever, just extra bells and whistles,
I guess the question, so we don't know, because Discord came out and said that there was no one planned.
Yeah.
There's no planning of the event. And like,
nevertheless,
I know people were skeptical of it.
The Justice is bringing, or not the Justice Department, I think Congress is bringing in Discord, Reddit, and a bunch of other like companies like that, even like Steam, the video game platform, to like say like, to talk about how they're radicalizing the youth or some bullshit like that. And it's like, there's no evidence of that.
Well, here's the thing about some of these video games. So with Discord, I know a lot of people are saying that, oh yeah, this Discord guy is a leftist and he's covering, but I don't know. I feel I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know the answer of this, but I'm assuming if they obstructed the investigation,
that would be bad for them. Yeah, could subpoena for this evidence. I'm sure they have.
Yeah, like they would get there'd be legal ramifications for this. So I'm inclined to believe that
Discord
cooperating.
The Discord guy has no reach to like cover for Tyler Robinson.
Yeah,
he has no good reason to do so.
So yeah, I'm inclined to believe Discord that they couldn't find, that there was no, at least evidence. I'm not sure how these things work if you delete the message, because
It's
saw
not
this video.
It's not like signal.
Yeah.
Any put on there is like subject to being seen by the people who have access to the back doors of it. It's not
So
like it's not an encrypted messaging system. You know,
yeah.
like
So I'll just push back. Well, you didn't. You're actually. I'm not really pushing back on you because you didn't say the contrary to this. But with Discord, I saw this video and about 2 or 3 weeks ago. I'll send it over to you. We could even do a full episode on this because it's really interesting. It's about these basically these sadists who gather on Discord and other websites, and they essentially they lure people in, and usually they're teenagers with like autism, and they essentially blackmail them into doing like sadistic apps, sadistic acts like killing animals and taking humiliating pictures, and they like essentially kind of use that as a way to pledge them into their group, and then they continue on the abuse to other people. It was a really, really frightening video to watch, and as a parent, like it scared the shit out of me. I will say with video games, you're saying all these. Well, but first and foremost, my point is that I believe Discord has been used for criminal acts before, or there's been.
Dude, you can probably say every single platform.
Yeah, I'm
Like
just saying it's not like. I don't think Discord. I'm sure Discord monitors the servers. However, I don't think they can monitor everything. Like I'm sure there's some heinous shit that goes on there.
It's like okay, what about Twitter? What about Reddit? What about 4chan? What about all of these? We've had this debate and this conversation before. It's not, they're providing a service, a private one at that. They're providing a service. They have some ethical responsibility to do their best to, make sure that their platforms aren't used for, nefarious purposes. But at the end of the day, it's just a tool. It's like guns. Guns don't kill people. People kill. Like that cliche, but it's true, right? Like it's not in and of itself bad. If people,
I'll send this video to you.
You did. I'll watch it.
It's interesting. But the other point I was making is that a lot of these online video games, and not all of them, but so the games that are geared towards kids, like Minecraft and Roblox, and I'm not really exactly sure what Roblox is. I'm not. I've heard about it, and allegedly, like it's just full of pedophiles.
Again, is that the fault of
because it's
game?
Like a virtual space?
Is that the fault?
The game? No, I'm saying that predators go on these video games to meet children.
Go walk the streets to meet children too. Is it?
No, but this is like this is a gathering point for children.
And so are like parks. We're gonna ban parks.
Yeah, but most children are supervised by their parents.
Dude, I don't know about you. As a kid, I used to go to the park by myself all the fucking time.
All right. Most of these predators are striking on. They're forming some sort of relationship.
I hear you.
Most predators are actually there. It's done from the home, but a lot of predators are online preying on kids, and they're using.
I hear you.
Different social media, these video games are social media. But I mean, I know I'm going off topic here. I just wanted to make the point that a lot of these online communities can be dangerous, or online tools can't. The
world is dangerous, Henry.
They're not these benign things that have perfect moderation.
I'll say what my principal used to say every morning during the morning announcements. He would end his announcements with the words, "Be careful out there." And you know what? Honestly, made sense. Just be careful out there. You can't.
Well, yeah, where you're from.
I mean,
from Elizabeth?
Yeah. And he would say that, and, it was like, because he had this like deep voice. He was like, and that's the announcements, and be careful out there. And it's like, all right. Actual quote. His name was Mr. Black. Scary guy. But he was right. Because you can't make the world safe. The world's not going to become safe for any reason. It's going to be messy. It's going to be dangerous. Just be careful. That's all I gotta say. But we can jump back into this, I guess. So now Ken's going to talk a little bit about the bullets. So the phrase inscribed on one of the bullet casings from the shooting, "Hey, fascist catch," though widely reported to mean that he was a man of the left, is in fact a reference to the Helldivers 2 game. The 3 arrows initially believed to be by federal agents to be a reference to Antifa are also a reference to Helldivers. It's like the combination of buttons you need to press to do the bomb. Private Discord messages shared with me by a friend of Robinson's confirmed that Robinson wasn't some political martyr. A search for posts of Robinson's containing keywords like Biden and Trump turns up just 1 hit each. So again, they searched through the chats and only found 1 each in these chats. The Trump posting was a passing reference to the 2019 impeachment inquiry, and the Biden one came out the day of the 2020 election where he provided an update to another friend asking about the status of the vote count. So it says here's on September 25th, 2019. Tyler says, an impeachment inquiry has been placed against Donald Trump. He could get booted out if they find he committed the shit he's accused of. And then the other one was a little bit longer from 2020. Someone is asking him directly, like, who's winning the election. I'm not going to read through this because it's nonsense. He gives, his take on it, his analysis on what's going to happen, says it's a pretty close race. And then the person responds, K. I mean, honestly, if this is what we're going off of to say that he was like some kind of radical, then Henry, both you and I are the most extreme of the extremists, because we've said to each other way crazier shit than this.
Well, I mean, this is not even, this isn't even like political opinions.
Yeah, it's like not even normal, in the ballpark, not even
normal. They're just like
normal conversations.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the point of the article that Ken wrote, right? Like the Substack that he wrote. It's to point out that like this kid isn't like some radical, crazy, political anything.
At least with the evidence that we have right now. Right. Like we don't know.
And it's important
there's going to be more things that come out, I'm sure, that could potentially indicate that he is a radical. But from what we have right now,
and what I think
it's hard to really make the profile.
The message that he's trying to point out, which I think is a really positive one, Ken, here, is that like we can't just go jumping to the conclusions immediately because we want it to be so. I can't tell you how many people, like I know people who were like, oh, this has to be, a right winger because, lefties don't shoot guns, which is an interesting argument, but like also irrelevant. And then I know right wingers who were like, oh, this has to be a left winger because look, he has fascism on his bullets and he's gay and like he's into trans women or some shit like that.
Well, that was my take.
Yeah.
So,
so I guess what he's trying to say is like, chill out, right? We don't have enough information. And actually what's coming out as we are getting more information, and Ken has gotten more information, it actually makes it more confusing and not less confusing, right? Now the new evidence that we're getting makes it way harder to pin this guy. Anything.
Let's go to the next quote.
Little bit. Do we want to skip some of this here or?
So, no, that's important. Even the goodbye message he sent.
So he says, the goodbye messages, this is, again, the guy who's talking to Ken, who's a friend of him. Even the goodbye messages he sent in one of our servers where Discord chats are hosted was so hard to believe. We all just thought, what a weird joke to make. Then the news came out and we're all calling each other saying, check the news. He said, yeah, I don't know what makes a person like him decide he's going to drive 260 miles upstate to shoot someone like Charlie Kirk, then come back like nothing happened. It leaves a lot of room for speculation and theories, which is why I think they're so rampant. It's interesting. Part of the confusion he attributes to Tyler's quiet nature. He was a really smart guy, but super hard to read, stone cold poker face, and you could always never be confident in assuming anything. When I asked if he opened up to anyone, the friend replied, as far as we know, he was opened up. Despite his verbal, Robinson was not a loner, according to his friends. Unlike the stereotypical outcast shooter driven to violence by social rejection, he was apparently amiable and well-liked. Everyone who knew him and liked him, he was always nice and a little quiet and kept to himself mostly, but he wasn't a recluse, his childhood friend says. Regardless of the horrible actions that took place, we must take this moment to that God is a living God who loves all his children. And this is a Discord post from another friend posted the day after the shooting. While Charlie Kirk's politics was not acceptable to some, I ask that we all say a prayer for him and his family during the confusing times. So this is the last message that he obtained on September 12th, 2025. And this is kind of just to point out, and he says that, the last message is like a religious message in nature that just goes to show the apolitical nature of the server. We all have pretty differing views on politics, the friend said of the Discord post. We just all exist as friends and just play stuff. And then he kind of posts some other shit, right? So cat memes, weather updates, home improvement, Garfield references, right? So like Tim's, here's a cat they posted in their chat. Here is a picture of some weather in New Hampshire. Here's some weather in Utah that he posted. Here's them talking about some home improvement shit. This is of course belying the point that it was a regular mundane ass chat, had nothing to do with like some radicalization or something like that. It's kind of an important point, I think, at the end here. The federal government and Washington crowd and corporate media based in Washington and New York see the country as a wholly partisan in wholly partisan terms: Republicans versus Democrats, red versus blue, old media versus social media, liberal versus conservative, right versus left, straight versus gay, and on and on. Charlie Kirk's assassination in Utah should remind us that of the actual diversity of the nation and the cost of the polarization that demonizes the other side. No one in Robinson's group is cheering or justifying the murder in any of the messages I reviewed. They're just struggling to understand what their friend did. But Washington has become obsessed with the Discord chat, convinced it's some kind of headquarters for the murder and cauldron of radicalization and conspiracy. Today, FBI Director Patel vowed to investigate anyone and everyone in that Discord chat, that's fucking scary for those kids. They did absolutely nothing.
That is scary, but
I mean, it makes sense.
I do think that there needs to be an investigation on these guys. Of course,
but like
obviously
we're reading that. I've actually seen that. Like I've seen that video of him talking about it, and the way he says it sounds fucking like he's coming after them.
Yeah. I understand. Like we
like they're coming to get you.
The implication was that, oh, we're coming for that Discord chat.
Mm-hmm.
And chances are these are all just like 20-year-old kids who
fucking video
are
games
like
and
fucking
shit.
Probably scared out of their mind because they have a connection to this.
Yeah.
But there needs to be an investigation. Like we don't know.
Oh yeah, of course.
I do believe the content of this article.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just we don't know. Like
we don't.
We don't know. So it's interesting because they all just sound obviously just like normal kids.
Yeah.
But I guess we're gonna figure out more. And again, the risk of doing episodes like this is that we can just be like completely overtook.
Yeah,
by
like tomorrow they could be like they find
tomorrow.
his like manifesto, shit like that, right?
Yeah, tomorrow the manifesto's out,
Mm-hmm.
and everything that we said, there is some crazy political agenda, or we find out he's like into the occult or something like that. Who knows?
Right.
He's like the son of Sam, who or some shit like that.
Yeah.
Who knows what's going to come out?
Nobody.
But I think it's right to not just the first couple days. Obviously, it's a tragic, horrible thing to witness. Fucking deal with your emotions.
Yeah, process it how you need to, right?
I certainly was. I certainly was, and this is one of the reasons why we waited to do this episode, just so we can reflect a little bit more. But yeah, I don't think that anyone should be gearing up to stick it to the other side right now.
But and to be very clear, even if this kid is a crazy radical Antifa anything, is literally not an excuse to go in and start attacking or doing any kind of counter violence or anything like that towards any left leaning people or any people in general, period. Like if you felt anything how Charlie Kirk was killed, if you feel any kind of human empathy for the loss of his life, then take that and hold on to that empathy and and use it and remember it when you're feeling hatred towards someone else, because we're all just people.
I mean, go to church, I certainly kind of got more in touch with like my confessional heritage after that happened, and it was really helpful. So I want to just talk about one last thing before we wrap this up, because we've been going on. So
an hour and a half,
Cash Patel.
Yeah, let's talk about this. Is the juiciest
Cash
part,
Patel. So man, Listen, man, I don't know that much about FBI procedure or what they should be doing in a case like this.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I'm no one to judge, but doesn't it seem like he is not doing a good job?
I don't think he should have been the FBI director in the first place. This guy is wildly like unqualified for this job. But I think this specific instance is like really shining a light on how fucking out of touch he is with the role and responsibility. Let's do this. I'm going to play the clip about this note from Cash Patel, and I don't know if you're going to be able to hear it, Henry. So I'm gonna Slack this to you. I'm gonna send this.
I exactly what you're talking about,
and just I just want y'all to just process how it is that he is thinking about this. Wild. I'm gonna pull this up now.
Written note, was there? Did he write a written note before the assassination attempt? That's what the governor said yesterday. And what did that say? If you could.
So what I'm able to say, I'm sorry. So what I'm able to say is I addressed it partially earlier, is that the written note, we believe, what did exist, and we have evidence to show what was in that note, which is, and I'm going to summarize, basically saying, the suspect wrote a note saying, I have the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk, and I'm going to take it. That note was written before the shooting. Evidence of its existence, we now have learned, existed before the shooting, was in the location in the suspect and partner's home. But we have since learned that the note, even though it has been destroyed, we have found forensic evidence of the note, and we have confirmed what that note says because of our aggressive interview posture at the FBI.
So that was that. What's your take on that, Henry?
So there was a written note. So he's saying that he wrote it down.
He wrote
to confess. So pen and paper.
Mm-hmm. Maybe.
And
it could have been digital, but he didn't specify.
Kind of assuming that it was a written note, the way that they said it was destroyed.
Well, he said, and he also said that there was forensic evidence of the note having existed. That doesn't.
And that was a note to his boyfriend, right?
Yeah, but that doesn't
girlfriend or
to partner. That doesn't mean that it necessarily has to be physical or digital, right? That's not actually saying anything. He didn't say he burned the note. He just said he destroyed it. He could be using like fucking FBI language, right? And they might just say that even deleting an email is like destroying the evidence, right? Forensic evidence could be, the soot from the paper that he burnt, or it could be, I don't know, digital markers of, some file that he deleted. I don't know. We don't know because he's fucking speaking in weirdness, but
did he say, and I just want to make sure I heard this right.
We can go back and listen to it again.
Aggressive.
Yes.
Did he say aggressive?
Mm-hmm. Let's just pull it back up.
Read that.
Yeah, let's just
play it back.
Watch it again. I want you to pay attention to that last line.
Aggressive interrogation.
Yep. Let's just do that. Let's just do that last line.
Written note, was there? Did he write a written note before?
To summarize, that note was written before the shooting. Evidence of its existence, we now have learned, existed before the shooting, was in the location in the suspect and partner's home. But we have since learned that the note, even though it has been destroyed, we have found forensic evidence of the note, and we have confirmed what that note says because of our aggressive interview posture at the FBI.
Our aggressive interview posture at the FBI. Let's play this back, because I'm gonna say it in non-FBI guy talk, right? In non-Cash Patel.
Well, I know. I think we know what it means. Aggressive interview.
No. Not aggressive interview tactic is like the last part. I'm talking about the whole string of what he's saying. He's saying Tyler wrote a note. They found it, or they believe that it existed sometime before he shot Charlie Kirk, and it existed in the home of him and his partner. But it doesn't exist anymore because it was destroyed. But we definitely know that it existed because we have forensic evidence of it existing. And also we know what was in the note, like the content of the note, through our aggressive interview tactics. This is nothing. This is like fucking, this shit won't hold up in court. What the fuck is he talking about? He said, just trust me, bro. Trust me. He wrote a note probably. Trust me.
What strikes me is the word aggressive interview tactics.
Yeah.
Does that mean that they were like
I think they
listen, you little homo, you're gonna fucking like,
Yes.
you're gonna be in the firing squad.
Yes.
Like,
I
what
think
did
that's what they did. I think his or her, their Fifth Amendment rights. I think probably under duress, they obtained something.
Yeah,
out of
that's
them.
where I'm getting at. So like, did they give you the contents under duress? So
I don't know that it existed at all, right? At this
Yeah.
stage, how he described the existence of this note, there's nothing that proves that this is real, that this is even real, that there even was a note in the first place. I am not trying to stick up for this Tyler kid. I think it's entirely plausible that he did shoot him, that he did kill.
I think it's
Charlie Kirk.
likely that he. I mean, I've read some of the conspiracy theory, the other ones that he was.
It
There's
wasn't
all
him.
sorts of stuff.
There's all sorts of
that
shit. I think
they're
it's
like-
entirely likely. Here's the thing, though. We live in a society of like laws, and you have to go through a court system, and we have amendments to the Constitution that protect us from illegal search and seizure, from self-incrimination, and importantly, from obtaining falsified information or information through like in duress. Right? That's the Fifth Amendment, protects you against that. Also, there might be some Sixth Amendment violations here to say, in the sense that like, outside of just this one thing, Cash Patel's been all over the media sphere, basically saying that Charlie Kirk is guilty because we have the note doesn't exist.
Tyler Robinson.
Yeah, that we have the note from Tyler, and we also have DNA evidence that links him to the gun that was used, right? Can't do that. Like, that is actually against the Sixth Amendment, because the Sixth Amendment allows for you to have a fair trial with a jury of your peers. And if he's going around on the media saying that he's guilty because we have all the evidence, then he's immediately like tainting all of the jury, the entire jury pool. It's entirely possible that these things, plus some of the other stuff that he's saying, it could result in a mistrial, which would be a gross negligence by the FBI, by Cash Patel specifically, if the person who murdered Charlie Kirk gets off on a technicality. This could be, I don't know how good of a lawyer fucking Tyler is going to get, but any fucking lawyer with any sense is going to push back on that, which would make admission of like, there's some chain of custody issues around how they found the gun, and whether or not they can actually, there's no evidence or video that places the gun with him, at all. How did they get the DNA evidence from the gun? Is there a proper chain, or was this a plant, right? And that's what the defense is probably going to say. They're going to say a bunch of shit. They're going to say, you just said this shit, and now he can't get a fair trial because everyone thinks he did it already, because the FBI director came out on Fox News every day for like a fucking week after he died, saying it was definitely this guy, even though they fucked up once and they got the wrong guy, and then now they got the right guy. And here's all his evidence, and he's a lefty, this, that, and the other, but all the evidence doesn't suggest that anymore. And it's such a farce. Honestly, it would be a tragedy, in my opinion, if Charlie Kirk doesn't get justice because of some fucking dipwad like Cash Patel doesn't know how to fucking do his job and just wants to politicize all this bullshit and
Well, he's doing it for.
his
I
boss.
presume he's doing it for Trump. Yeah, for Trump.
Mhm.
But I don't know. I don't want to dive too much into this because
I'm just saying,
I'm
it's
not
like,
even gonna say.
as much as I disagreed with Charlie Kirk in life, in his death, I want fucking justice, because I want to apply that law equally across everyone.
Yeah, and we
this
just want
is
we want
fucking-
closure on this.
Yeah.
It's. I mean, the wound. It's going to be a wound that's going to be open for a while, but we want the truth. We want the truth, and just having this open file, or like, because more than the confession to his friends on Discord. Yeah, I would imagine that's like
probably good
obviously
enough to
It's good enough.
Yeah.
I don't know if that exactly accounts for confession, but
I don't know. I mean,
certainly
could
it seems I got to talk to a lawyer, but it certainly seemed like one to me, because he said I did it.
it all
I
done
don't
how
know if he
honestly it all done how he please, because if he pleads not guilty, then that, just by pleading not guilty, it would bring it into discovery, which I would love, because I would love some additional information on this. More specifically, it kind of runs counter to the narrative that he admitted to doing it,
Well, actually, there's one more thing that we're mixing. We're missing the conversation, the text messages between Tyler and Lance. And I don't really feel like going through all this because we've been going on for a while. And I'm sure everyone has read this. Have you read that yet?
What you have read so much already.
So there was a text exchange between Tyler Robinson and his
partner Lance.
Mm-hmm. Did you see the conversation?
No. What did it say?
Let me send it to you right now. We'll go over that. Oops. And then we'll end with this. So people are saying that this is fake. I mean, when I say people, I mean internet commentators. I don't know. I guess I understand where they're coming from. It does seem kind of
interesting. This seems to refer to
the note.
But this is destroyed note? I don't know. If this is the same thing as the thing that this exchange, see, again, this could be digital, right? And so because it's digital and because it's destroyed and because of this weird...
Why don't you pull up the article real quick?
Right.
Let's just go through it.
Yeah, I'm suspicious about this, but this is directly related. Let's change the screen.
I mean, if this is real, then obviously this seems enough to...
If it's real.
Kind of...
Okay. This is
from an open shut case of his guilt, but...
Yeah, BBC. So it's saying the man suspected, blah, blah, blah.
The Gray's on article. No, I'm joking.
So it's saying roommate, which we know the name of the roommate is Lance, says Tyler Robinson had left a confession under his keyboard. So I guess paper, but then
yeah,
here's a full record of a series of text messages. And then it says after reading the note that Cash Patel is referring to, the roommate responds via text message. I'm assuming what ? And then there's like this exchange. I wonder if we can read it. Yeah, okay. So he says, "What? You're joking, right? I'm still okay, my love, but I am stuck in Orem for a little while longer yet. Shouldn't be long until I can come home, but I got to grab my rifle still, to be honest. I had hoped to keep the secret till I died of old age. I am sorry to involve you. Roommate, you weren't the one who did it, right? I'm sorry." Okay, seems like an admission of guilt there. "I thought they caught the person. No, they grabbed some crazy old dude and then interrogated someone in a similar clothing. I had planned to grab my rifle from the drop point shortly after, but most of that site of the town got locked down. It's quiet, almost enough to get out, but there's one more vehicle lingering. Why? Why did I do it? Yeah, I had enough of his hatred. Some hate can't be negotiated out. If I'm able to grab my rifle unseen, I'll have left no evidence. Going to attempt to retrieve it again. Hopefully they have moved on. I haven't seen anything about them finding it. How long have you been planning this? A bit over a week. Something about a squad car parked right by it. Blah, blah, blah." And then eventually he says, delete this exchange. Wants photos of the rifle. He says, "Grandpa knows what to do." Blah, blah, blah. Don't talk to the media.
I'm worried that my old man would do if I didn't bring Grandpa's rifle. I don't know if I had a serial number, but it wouldn't trace to me. Worry about prints. I had to leave it in the bush where I changed outfits.
And all of this seems like super on the nose. Why would somebody who just committed murder and who's clearly attempting to get away with it? He's saying, "I want to go pick up my rifle. I want to do this." Why the fuck would he be texting all of this very convenient information?
Yeah, dude. It's interesting.
I mean, he could just be stupid, right? He could be fucking abundantly
Allegedly,
stupid.
he was smart.
But here's the thing. Yeah, allegedly he was very smart. Here's the thing, though. It's all hinging on this alleged note. Doesn't exist anymore. That Cash Patel said that they got through aggressive interrogation posture. I don't know. Again, I don't not want this note to be real, or I don't not want this evidence to be real. What I do want is for Cash Patel to stop potentially fucking shit up,
Yeah.
Like, keep your mouth shut, let the case play out, let the big boys do their job, and you can claim victory later, just shut the fuck up is my advice to Cash Patel.
Yeah. People are saying that this is just too contrived. Maybe it does sound a little contrived.
I mean, I'm reading it, and it's like as if you asked ChatGPT to invent the exchange between two people through a murder, confessing to the murder.
I wonder if you put it in a AI
some bullshit. I've
detector would have come
literally other nonsense. I've literally handwritten stuff before, and it came up as like potentially AI. I don't believe any of those detectors at all.
So interesting. All right. Well, I guess we'll see. I don't really have any other comment other than, I mean, if that is real, then I don't know. It's hard to.
Here's
not
one thing
come
I
to
want to
the
leave you with.
conclusion that it's this guy.
Here's one thing I want to leave you with, and this is like, I can't underscore this more. Why I keep saying that Cash Patel needs to shut the fuck up, because I think he's ruining it. O.J. Simpson got acquitted. The glove didn't fit. Remember the saying, if the glove don't fit,
Yeah.
you must acquit, right? On some,
What's up, Twitter world?
it was obvious that he did it. I mean, he even went on a fucking like victories parade afterwards and wrote a book, If I Did It, outlining how he did it, you know? So even like in our justice system, and fairly so, because you have to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that somebody did something, especially because the Justice Department seems to be, and the state of Utah might even be, searching for capital punishment. So if we're going to kill somebody over this, you have to, beyond a shadow of a doubt, fucking prove that this was the right man, right? And anything that interrupts that evidence and will and should be called into question. And we've seen very high-profile cases go sideways just because there's not a sufficient amount of evidence there. And I think what Cash Patel right now is doing could potentially amount, and I'm not a lawyer, so who the fuck do I know? What the fuck do I know? But like, just from what I'm reading, yeah, it could amount to like breaches of his constitutional rights. And so specific and key pieces of evidence could be thrown out, you know?
Very strange. It's just bizarre. It's bizarre, and it is sad. All right. I think I'm done talking about this for the rest of the day. I know there's another article, but it was a little too conspiratorial to.
For real, yeah.
I don't feel like going over like the logistics and if he had enough time to do this and the exact
a lot
way
of interesting points
to
in that,
disassemble his
but,
rifle.
Yeah, but
There's a lot of interesting points, but the logistics, I just can't. I can't.
We'll let that
handle
play
right
out
now.
in court.
Yeah, but I guess the question is whether you use a hex key or a screwdriver to disassemble his rifle.
Right. And do you
I don't fucking know
40
the
inch
answer to that
plus
question.
Bolt action rifle without anyone noticing it? Yeah.
I mean, there's definitely questions, but I don't know. I guess the main message of today's show is a lot of shit's going to come out. Just treat everything with a little bit of healthy skepticism, but like don't jump to wild conclusions until we get the full story. And that's it.
And also, violence is never the answer.
This?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Just again, rest in peace, Charlie Kirk. You did not deserve to go out like that. Praying for your family and your friends and your soul. And, that's all I got to say. Peace, guys.